All right, we are live. I'm excited about today's guest, Ryan Lundquist from Sacramento Appraisal Blog. If you're local to the Sacramento area, you know the guy because he's a rock star. If you're watching from somewhere else in the U.S., Ryan Lundquist, Sacramento Appraisal Blog. Great real estate stats, follows the market, and can shed some light on some of the changes that are going on. If you're not in Sacramento, California, stuff is still relevant because markets, although they're independent and they act independently, some of the stuff happens, in what's the right word? In unison, in how the markets kind of roll together. I don't know. English is a hard language, Ryan. I'm sorry.
It is. I get it, Matt. So there's grace.
Thanks for joining us, man. I'd love to just jump in and talk real estate. You know, you've got the blog that you're updating all the time. What are some of the stats that you're following? What are some of the things that you're watching right now in this ever-changing real estate market?
Yeah, well, first I'll just say, the backdrop, everyone knows that the market has changed drastically over the past few months. And what it was, at first, it looked like, okay, there's a little bit of change between April and May, but then May to June stats, really sharp change. And I think one of the things that we've seen since then is, sharper price declines. And, normally prices soften at this time of year. And right now it's just a little bit higher than usual. And so something we have to keep watching. But I think notably, it's just taking longer to sell right now. And so when you look in the region, I just pulled stats right now, and, properties were, 33 days on market on average for pendings over the past couple of weeks. And, that's so much different than when it was 12 days. And, even the median, half the properties on the market over the past 2 weeks have taken 23 days to get into contract. So basically, you're getting into contract on average around 4 weeks right now, or maybe a little more. And that's a far cry of listing on Thursday and reviewing multiple contracts on Monday. And so I think that, that's a stunning stat. But for me, I think the big daddy of them all is that we've seen buyer demand drop. And so when you look at pending contracts, the number of pendings and the number of sales are down by about 30%. And so that's huge for a couple of months in a row. Means that basically 30% of the market is missing. Okay, then on the positive side, 70% of the market is here. And so I think there's different ways to look, at that. But I think those are some of the big ones. I could talk for an hour, but you probably don't want me to do that. So just to kick it off.
Yeah, no, I like that stuff. And I want to encourage everybody, go ahead and fire away any and all questions you have, real estate related, mortgage related. I always like when we've got some interaction with the folks that are joining. Looks like we got 35 or 40 folks already live, and hopefully we have over 100 by the time this thing gets rolling. But yeah, it's definitely a different market. And the cool part about having conversation with you, Ryan, is that, you know, I'm talking to people on a daily basis. I'm talking to real estate agents. I'm working through the mortgage process because I'm actively involved in mortgage origination. I'm not necessarily looking at the stats, but I still feel all the same things that you're seeing in the stats where stuff is sitting longer on the market. Truth be told, most all of this change in the market is all good stuff for buyers. Buyers that can take a deep breath. You know, they can get themselves fully pre-approved, go through that process. And I would think it's more enjoyable when you can say, you know what, I'm interested in that one. I like that one. Let me talk to my real estate agent. Let me tour those. Let me have a conversation with my significant other. Let me decide what I want to offer, if I want to offer it all. A lot of this stuff over the last 2 years has felt like you need to rush to get pre-approved, to put in an offer, to make a decision. And taking that out of it is only good for buyers. And on top of it, you know, being a less rushed to the market type of situation, you're also in a position where you can probably offer list price or less than list price, maybe get a seller concession. So I don't know if you have it up, Ryan, but I know that on your socials, I saw something that you posted about seller concessions. What stats can you quote off the top of your head when it comes to seller concessions? Because I'm seeing them on what feels like to me every other purchase contract.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's increasing right now. And I think we need a little bit of time to, you know, see how the trend goes. But let me see. It looks like almost 40% of sales in Sacramento County had concessions last month, maybe 37%. But that number is going to keep going up. Okay. And so for a while, credits almost disappeared and people had to make really aggressive offers. And what I'm seeing in the stats is that buyers are finally not having to offer as aggressive. And so last month they went on average 2% below the asking price. And, you know, it's about 12,500 below. Now, look, there were still a lot of sales that sold above the asking price. There were 37%. Okay. And so it's not like everything is selling below the list price, but I think it's a good thing when buyers get more used to not having to offer so much and getting to keep their contingencies in place, right? Where the appraisal as a tool actually matters more, where it just seemed like it was not even something that mattered last year. And so I think those are all good things. One thing I'm noticing too is that multiple offers today, it doesn't mean the same thing as it did last year. And so last year at the same time, when there were multiple offers on a property, it almost always sold above the list price. But then this year, you know, the stats show that 37% of the time, these properties with multiple bids, they're closing below the list price. And so just because you get multiple offers doesn't mean you're always going above. And I think buyers right now are getting used to the idea of, hey, I'm going to offer less because I know that there's less competition out there, right? But it would be a big mistake, though, for a buyer to hear my stat and be like, oh, I'm just going to offer 12,500 below the list price because look, if that listing is priced too low, it's probably going to get bid up anyway. And so you just got to be aware, where is actual value? I think that's probably the key.
Yeah. And that's something important for people to understand. It's real estate is complex, and that's why you want to have a great agent on your side. That's why you want to have a great mortgage professional on your side, is because it's not a one size fits all. To your point about list price, I had a buyer recently who was offering on something in the Bay Area, and it was listed at $999. My buyer went in at $1,030,000. And, you know, I'm not involved in looking at comps and doing all the stuff that the real estate agent is doing. I'm just over here saying, you know, you've got access to your pre-approval letter, connect me with the list side. I'll have a conversation with them and help you get your offer accepted. I talked to the agent. The agent goes, hey, Matt, just so you know, we had this listed at 1.4 and we dropped the price to $999. We wanted to create a little bit of frenzy, which we did. That's why we have 12 offers now. It's going to sell somewhere between 1.2 and 1.25, which if it would have sold there when it was listed at 1.4, the headline would have been, hey, it sold 200,000 below list. But now, since they reduced it to $999, they essentially got these 12 offers and they did a multiple counter with all of them to 125 and said, who wants to pay it? My clients didn't want to pay it, but nonetheless, like, it's a really clear example for people of list price is only list price. It's the same house that was 1.4 that got dropped to 999. At 1.4, it was overpriced and there was no action. It could have sold for 200 below or 150 below. At 999, it was drastically underpriced. It got the attention that they wanted to get, and now it's going to sell for 250,000 above list price. But list price is just a price that got put on that property.
Yeah, no, I agree, and we have to look at all those things, and it's easy to get sensational in real estate, and so we have to be careful with that.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to pick out something that you said because I thought it was interesting. Oh yeah, the appraisal and inspection, those contingencies being in place. My conversation, boots on the ground, and what you've seen, through the stats and the changing of the market, that for sure is a positive, and that for sure is a good thing. I've got Sean Leonard. I don't know if you know him personally, but he's an inspector who does a lot of work in the Bay Area. He's going to join my live because he said, Matt, there's great information that people that follow the channel have to hear, and I'll present it to them. During this frenzy of the last 2 years, as you would maybe guess, people were just offering whatever price, no appraisal contingency, no inspection contingency. He's telling me, Matt, like, he's come across more of these terrible stories in the last 6 months than his whole career, where there's a $150,000 foundation issue. There's a sewer problem that's a $40,000 sewer problem. All this stuff, because in a market that felt really competitive where you had to do anything to get offer accepted, people made the mistake of waiving all these contingencies. We're thankfully now in a market you don't have to do that. But Sean's going to share with us some stories. I think it's going to be either late August or early September. The importance of having an inspection contingency in place, the importance of having that appraisal contingency in place. The good news is I'm seeing it almost all contracts, like you said. So we shouldn't have too many more of those horror stories happening from contracts written the second half of 2022.
Yeah, no, and I'm hearing the same thing and seeing the same thing, from agents, and right now properties, about, a lot of them aren't getting any offers, and so they have to keep reducing the price to try to find the market. But when properties are getting offers, it might just be one. It really might be sort of that Elon Musk situation where, you have to hold on to that buyer before he takes off. And so I was going to say, on that note, I think for anyone in real estate listening, it's so important to have fast escrows right now. And so I strongly recommend for sellers to, get your pest inspection done up front, and let the buyer know what he or she is walking into right away. And, we want to get the appraiser out there as soon as possible also. And so I know I was talking with a colleague the other day on Twitter, and, this property got into contract in May, and then the appraiser goes out there very recently. Well, the market has changed since May and prices are lower. And so, people can get bent out of shape with the appraiser for coming in low, so to speak, but there's so much time had elapsed from when the property got into contract that the market had changed. And so I think it's a market of quick escrows, not that people have to rush. I would keep all your contingencies intact, but there's a sense, at least from the seller side, to be like, there's incentive to be accommodating to buyers, to negotiate, to give credits, and to not prolong things.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the good news is, with less transactions going on, we all can realize that less transactions are going on. Appraisers aren't backed up like they were the last couple of years. We're getting appraisals back quick,
fast.
I won't say that I'm the only lender in town that can close quickly. Most all lenders can now close a loan 15, 17, 21 days. As long as the buyer has a thorough pre-approval up front, they're really controlling the speed of their escrow by how fast they get in documents and conditions that are asked of them. But we're more often than not now clear to close in 2 weeks, asking the sell side Are you guys all ready to close quick? Because we're clear, we can draw docs and sign this thing on Tuesday and close on Wednesday. So that's a good point. I threw up SacramentoAppraisalblog.com on the screen. I just want to give a shout out to your blog. Hopefully, folks that are watching here get a chance to go check that out. I'm gonna see. We got a couple questions coming across. Some of my favorite folks are joining us. Kevin Hawthorne out in Florida. Thanks for joining. Alex Radoni. He's a local. He's a local to us. If you have to pull permits to build an ADU or an at-home gym in a separate structure pool house, will your house get reappraised and property taxes increase if it appraises higher? You want to tackle this one, Ryan?
So that sounds like an assessor issue. And so typically for anything involving permits, they know about it and they're going to tax you on it. And so, and I find sometimes with accessory dwellings, you might turn in your costs that it was $200,000 to build. And guess what they're going to tax you on? Where that pool was, significant money, they're going to tax you on the full amount. And so I think sometimes there's an argument to be had for like, look, here's what it cost, but here's a different amount that it contributes to market value. And so I would strongly recommend arguing for that with support, with comps, tell the story. But yeah, your property taxes are likely going to go up.
Right. Yeah. And I personally did. Go ahead.
Oh, and hopefully on the appraisal side of things, whether you're doing a purchase, refi, or whatever reason, hopefully you're getting some more value there also.
Yeah. Because the county is not going to come out and do an appraisal, Alex, just for clarity. Like, if you went through something where you've got to get permits for it, like I did a 400 square foot addition, me and my wife did, and the general contractor submitted something to get those permits, and we've got something that we submitted to the county to say, here's what it cost, and they, upped our taxes as we would assume based on the costs and whatnot, but didn't come out and say, oh, your house went from X value to this value. It was just you put a 400 square foot addition on. Luckily, you did it 2019 before the cost of materials went through the roof. I think we had good timing there, but nonetheless, increased property taxes wherever they can get it. This one sounds like a lending question. Thanks for joining, Carrie. Is it possible to put 10 or 15 down for a single family investment property, or is it always 20 to 25? It is possible, Carrie, if it's a single family, to do 15%. Comes with mortgage insurance. The rate is a lot higher than it would be with 20 or 25% down. Also, if you look at 20% versus 25%, it's quite a big difference. The lenders on the investment property side are going to give you a lot better terms at 25%. So I have a lot of investors that do 25%, but like anything else, you can get yourself pre-approved, get a couple quotes and look at it 20 versus 25 and decide what you want to do. All right, what else we got here for questions? I don't know the answer to this one, but you might, Ryan. Can mature communities someday add HOA, or is it something that must be established during development?
That's a good question. I don't technically know. I would assume that you can add one though and go through the process. Wouldn't it be weird if the only opportunity for you to ever have an HOA is at the very beginning? It just seems like that wouldn't be something that would be in play. So that's my guess, but I don't technically know. Yeah,
I'm not sure either, but my guess would be the same as yours. Joey Garessi out in Oklahoma City, super fan. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for doing this. We enjoy it. At least I do. I don't know if Ryan enjoys it as much as I do, but I like getting on here every Monday at 3:00 and just chatting with the YouTube class. This is YouTube University.
I do. And shout out to Matt. He recently gave me a Yeti, Matt, the mortgage guy, but I realized that I was drinking a different one today. And so I turned around the logo because I was like, oh, someone else gave me that. So sorry, man, I forgot to bring your Yeti.
All good.
Next time I will make it up to you.
I saw the front of that Yeti when we were talking earlier. I really like the guys over at Empire Home Loans. So I'm not even mad.
They're great guys.
Great guys for sure.
I was drinking and all of a sudden I was like, oh, I can see the logo of a different loan office.
Anthony, Leo, Julie, all the great folks over there, they'll be happy to promote them.
We're cool dudes.
We're good buds. Yeah, we're all friends. All right, what else we got here? Joey's got a appraiser question. When you're looking for comps how narrowly do you draw your criteria?
So Joey, there's not a one size fits all answer, okay? Because imagine if I said you have to stay within 3 streets, that wouldn't work in a rural area, would it? And so I think what we have to do is back up and ask ourselves, where are buyers shopping for similar properties? Where's the market area? And make our decisions based on that. So remember, it's not how far you can go for comps, it's where should you go. And in some areas, the market changes so drastically, so we want to stay in this tight space right here. And there might just be older sales. I'm going to use those older sales and I'll adjust them up or I'll adjust them down depending on what the market's done. Okay. In other areas, the neighborhood is just much larger, and I'm going to have a lot of selection in a wider area. Okay. But what I need to do is I don't want to pass by, all these sales in the immediate neighborhood. And then I'm cherry picking, ones out here that are higher. And so if I'm doing that, then there better be a good reason why I'm passing by lower stuff to search for higher stuff. Right. It's almost always the case, when I get handed some comps, so to speak, from other people, I'm like, gosh, that's in a totally different part of the zip code. Prices are higher there. And, let's talk about the 3 sales that are right here in the immediate area. Okay. But to be fair, sometimes there's something in the immediate area that just is a clunker. It was a fixer, or it's sold for low, or it was some sale that, was purchased by a company and then dumped, or, there's some story for why this one doesn't really reflect the market. And so I've got to look at a group of sales. I don't want to pin it all on one. And so, that's kind of what I'm doing. And today I'm paying really, really close attention to what is happening in the pending contracts, what is similar and actually moving. That shows me what the market's like today, as opposed to, say, 3 to 4 months ago, those properties that are closed in April or May. I'm more interested in the listings, what's going on right now. So I hope that helps.
Expert advice. I see one coming up too. We're going to ask for your expert advice again. I'll give you a chance to catch your breath though, and I'll answer a mortgage question. Can you provide today's rates for 20% down on a single family residence? I can't quote rates or an offer. NMLS number 1088993. But I will give you just a rough idea. I generally try to point people to mortgagenewsdaily.com, because mortgagenewsdaily.com, you just go there, you type on mortgage rates, it's going to give you a national average. They currently have 5.25% posted, which is a pretty good average. I went and priced it as a broker with UWM, who's just priced to take over market share and really dominate right now. And for that, buyer who's got a 780 credit score, putting 20% down on a $400,000 purchase, without paying any points, you can get a sub 5% rate. That being said, this isn't an offer to lend. This is just a rough estimate. A lot of things go into that question. What's your credit score? How big is the purchase price? What's the zip code? Do you want to pay points or not? Because I'm looking at the rate sheet right now. No points might be 499. If you felt like paying some points, you might get the thing down to 4.375. So that's my best way of answering that question without actually, putting a mortgage offer out there that might be non-compliant. So this is a really good question from Adriana Greico. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate the questions. And I think Ryan will be able to answer this one well. I'm sure a lot of agents with this similar type of issue right now. 4 listings coming soon. Any advice for pricing, since sales stats are a lagging indicator? This time of year is usually a tough time to list regardless of the current climate. And to your point, Adriana, it's probably even that much more tough, this specific year. So what would you say there, Ryan? I think this one is right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, well, first, congrats on the listings. That's fantastic. And I think that in any market, we have to remember sales are like historic artifacts. Okay, they tell us what the market used to be like. Even something that closed very recently in July, that property probably got into contract in June. So that sale that closed in July tells me what the market was like in June. And so it's a juggling act right now with where are my sales and then where are my pendings. Okay, and so if my sales are, I'm trying to get my webcam. If my sales are up here and my pendings start to be lower, I want to give strong weight. What is getting into contract? Where are my listings? Then I'm probably wanting to price for, to move according to the pendings. Okay, now I have to be, I think, really careful though with the pendings. I find that some stuff is being priced too aggressively. It's easy to leave money on the table. And I think the struggle today is it's going to take, statistically this month, I mean, it's taking about 4 weeks to get into contract for a lot of properties. Now, some properties get into contract very quickly, but I think this is where we want to look at the comps. How long are they taking to sell? How long are the pendings taking to sell? And that helps give us a sense of how long should we wait before really doing our reductions and being concerned, just because properties need more exposure since buyers have more power. And so there is a sense where they do have to wait longer. I concur with right now, because I think it's this weird pregnant moment in the market where everyone's getting back to school. Even my son works at a movie theater, and he's like, it is dead right now because no good movies come out, for these next couple of weeks, because people are thinking about school. And so I think that it's just going to take a bit. Thankfully, your listings will come on, somewhat soon, and maybe avoid some of this, pregnant moment. But again, in my mind, I think it's all about what is moving, what is getting into contract. And what I'm finding in a lot of areas is that, prices are lower. They really are compared to a few months ago. And they're, I would suggest for that listing to go lower also. And so that's been my experience in the trenches of appraisals, and when I'm doing valuations or giving advice. There isn't a one size fits all answer where I would say reduce by, X amount. I could give stats and be like, well, the median price went down by 2.3% last month in the region, but that doesn't even matter. The only thing that matters is what's going on in this particular neighborhood. So that's kind of my general answer, Adrian. I hope that's helpful. I know it's really general to the point where, like, was that even helpful?
I think it was. That was good stuff. And this one kind of ties into it, and I can answer it as I've, seen a lot of appraisals come across my desk with buyers in contract. Are you currently seeing many appraisal inspections not meeting the purchase price? I'm seeing the opposite. I looked at a couple this morning that came in over the weekend. And because of the fact that prices in a lot of areas were higher 2 months ago than they are today, I'm seeing appraisals come in higher than the contract price, where, today's market and today's price that was agreed upon between buyer and seller is $415,000, and then it appraises at $425,000. So I'm not seeing many at all that are appraising below. I'm seeing more appraise above than below. Most are meeting contract price, and the market's kind of figuring itself out. But what are you seeing from reports that you're writing or from your viewpoint, Ryan?
So I only do private appraisals now on purpose. That's a whole different, YouTube live on as to why. But I will say I have hundreds and hundreds of conversations with lots of different, people every single month, and I'm not hearing hardly anything about lower appraisals. I think last month I maybe heard it once or twice in all of my conversations. And so I did have an agent last week who reached out and said that she was actually concerned for the appraised value, felt really confident when this property listed, and there's been a couple lower sales recently. And so I think that there's a little bit of that dynamic going on, and so the market will figure it out. But if I can say this, so one thing I've observed is that there was this really, really steep decline in the stats in most metrics from May to June and then June to July, but it's kind of like the stats are starting to like balance out a little bit. And so it's like pendings were like doing a nosedive, and they've kind of started to do that. Okay, and so. Or I've noticed that, 37% of properties, pendings had multiple offers, but then 2 weeks ago it was 39. And then over the past 2 weeks, it's 41%. And so it seems like, there's almost a little bit more demand in some senses. I wonder if that's a reflection of rates going down slightly. Nothing to write home over, but I'm just saying that, we're in this market that's lost a lot of demand, but it almost feels like it sort of, went way down, and then it's sort of trying to figure itself out right now, and to be determined over the next 3 to 4 months. But, right now that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. It's funny how, we're trying to figure out what's happening in the market and how different things are affecting the market. It's hard because you can see a one-day decline in interest rates of 0.5%. That's not going to show up on a stat sheet for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, because you've got the time when it lists, the time when it goes pending, then the escrow period, then the time when it sells. And so to your point, I think it'll be interesting to see, Ryan, and I don't have the definite answer for people, but I'll put this up on the screen real quick because it's interesting for me to think about. Mid-June, we saw the absolute peak for mortgage rates, where if we look at Mortgage News Daily, because they're just a, unbiased third-party site, they show this average 30-year fixed across the board. And this was mid-June, 6.28 was the average. So people are, were paying attention or weren't. Like, if you think that 5.25 or 5% is a high interest rate, a month and a half ago it was, or 2 months ago it was a point or so higher. And so as these rates come down, are we starting to see demand come back into the market that wasn't there here, right? Like, we know that from February, call it, to June, rates went up and demand, in this time period was at a 22-year low, whatever high, you want to read headline wise. So over the last 8 weeks, rates have come down. Is there a certain percentage of buyers that are coming back to the market? Certain percentage of buyers that say, okay, I didn't want to buy when rates are 6.25, but at 5.25, it's doable from a monthly payment wise. I'm saying I don't have the answer, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with demand and sales and stuff over the next, call it 4, 8, 12 weeks. Casey, real quick, I'm sorry, I answered as a primary residence, and you caught on because those rates were way too good for investment property. If you're talking investment property, again, not an offer to lend, NMLS number 1088993. I think that's what I am. High sixes if it's 20% down on investment property. And like I said, it gets a lot better when you put 25% down. So if you put an extra 5% down, you're probably closer to high fives, putting 25% down on an investment property. So it's worth the extra 5%. There's my buddy Kyle. Win the house you love. Ryan, he's a big fan of yours.
Hey, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. So very cool.
If you haven't checked out his YouTube, Ryan, this guy, Kyle Seagraves, Win the House You Love, has an amazing YouTube channel. You talk about like educational content and cool tools and all the things that I aspire to be. There's no surprise. This guy's got like 115,000 followers on YouTube. This guy does it right. So I'm trying.
Check it out. I just typed it in. I'll do that. Hey, one question for you, Matt, that no one else has brought up. I hear so much about rate buy downs, and I wonder, are you seeing any of that in the contracts? Are you seeing sellers helping with, give credits to buy down rates, or are you seeing buyers on their side buy down rates? There's so much maybe lingo flying around and attention on this, but I just wonder, is it actually happening?
It is happening, and I'm glad you brought it up because I've been having a lot of conversations around it where there's probably a lot of misinformation, and anything that's like done at scale, there's going to be some people who are doing it wrong, some people that are doing it right. And I'm not the know all be all, but I will give people this. Make sure that when you're going about structuring a purchase, and that includes, the real estate and the price and the credits and the mortgage, have a conversation around it because you don't know what you don't know. And I had a client come to me recently and said, this seller wants to net 509. And we knew that. Buy side, list side, client, everybody knew 509 was their number. Or maybe it was 507. I think it was 507. And so they said, if we buy it for 522 and get 15,000 in credits, how far can we buy down the rate? We looked, and I'm an open book. I'll show you the whole rate sheet of what you can do. Buying the rate down, there's like a law of diminishing returns, where the first 5,000 might get you 3/8 or even a half of a point in rate. The next 5,000 only gets you a quarter, and then another 5,000 only gets you an eighth. So in this case, it made 0 cents to use 15,000 towards rate buy down. What was a better plan for them was, let's buy it for 512, get 5,000 in credits. That 5,000 buys you down to 475, and then use the fact that you paid $10,000 less. You're starting with less of debt on this house. It's one of those things where every situation is going to be different based on credit score, the rate sheet, and all that other stuff. But it's happening, and it's happening the right way in many circumstances, where it's a thought beforehand. It's, hey, we're going to ask for this much credit. We plan to use the credit to pay for closing costs or buy down the interest rate, or a combination of both. I've got multiple clients where I can remember off the top of my head the numbers, because I'm a numbers geek, where we had something like that, where it was 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 in credit. We found a sweet spot. Here's the sweet spot for how much we're going to use for a rate buy down. The rest we're going to use to offset the costs, which for buyers, if you're listening and you don't know what is encompassed in closing costs, you're going to prepay some tax and insurance. There's going to be title fees, and there's going to be lender fees and points if you so choose. But great question, Ryan. I hope I didn't dance around it too much or get too long-winded there, but it's definitely happening, and it's great for buyers, because every buyer is different. Every scenario is different. Some people, bringing $10,000 less to the closing table is a huge win. For other people, paying $175 less per month, that's a huge win. Having the conversation, being really clear about your financial goals and what you're looking to accomplish, and communicating that to a lender who can then present you options is how you want to go about it.
Yeah, no, and that's sort of my observation. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution for everyone. And I think when the market changes, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, but you can keep the price high by buying down the rate. And sometimes it's a real narrative that benefits the seller. And I think that there's a question that ties right into this by pros, cons. He or she asks, new home builders in Sacramento reducing prices. Well, I think what builders are doing right now is trying to keep the price high and buy down the rate, or offer credits, offer incentives, okay? And builders have a lot at stake, because they reduce prices. That affects, all their current stuff, but it also affects everything that they're going to build in the future too. And so they have strong incentive to try to keep prices as high as possible. So far, I've only heard of credits. I've heard of builders sort of courting agents again, even some notorious ones that were really hands-off, sort of, doing the Heisman to all the agents over the last couple of years, have now said, hey, guys, how you doing? Let's hang out. It's sort of like that, the guy who gets a girlfriend and then no longer hangs out with the posse of friends and comes back after the breakup, like, hey, guys, let's go play basketball. Like, and so, but I would say, where something to watch over time, builders in other markets have had to reduce prices. I've been hearing about some price reductions. And one area that I get excellent builder information is from Allie Wolf on Twitter. Allie Wolf, she works for Zonda. She's at Allie Wolf Econ. You can find her. I think she's putting out, constant information about new construction. But in the Sacramento area, you have North State BIA, and they're the Builders Institute Association, or whatever that acronym stands for. And the reality is, in June, their July stats aren't out yet, but for June, they cover 8 to 10 counties in the region. Volume was down 58%, and so there were about 300 or so missing sales this June compared to last year at the same time. And so it's indicative of a situation where a lot of buyers pumped the brakes or got out of contract. And then now, so builders are really courting agents heavily because of that, trying to make up, I think, for all of those sales that didn't happen. And so, it's inevitable if our market, loses demand over time. I mean, price declines are not the end of the world. There would be the most natural thing to see possible if demand isn't there to pay whatever the builders are asking. But I think it's just one of those things that we'll continue to watch and monitor. But clearly, I think concessions and credits are the first step for now anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree. This one ties really well into me promoting tomorrow's video. I recorded a video today on builder concessions, what we're already seeing, what we might see, and it was cool too because I took a trip down memory lane back to 2007 to dig up some information on what builders were doing in 2007 when when they were sitting on inventory and trying to sell. Like they were offering, we'll pay your first 4 mortgage payments, we'll pay all your closing costs, we'll pay for taxes and insurance, free upgrades. And so to your point, like builders are probably going to try to do whatever they can to give you incentives versus lowering their price, because lowering their price just sets like a ceiling for what they can sell in that community or future builds for. So they'll give you the whole granite countertops upgrade, 10,000 towards closing costs, other things, right? Which is still a seller incentive. So it's definitely something that's fun for buyers in the market to have a little bit of leverage. Get yourself partnered with a great agent who can go out there and negotiate on your behalf, whether it's a new build or it's a resale home. Got some more of your fans in here, Ryan. Stephanie Temple's big fan of yours, and she's talking about sign up for appraisal classes.
You are too kind. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I really, really appreciate that. It's very flattering. I have a class, let's see, October 20th at SAR, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. It's called How to Think Like an Appraiser. I don't know if there's a link live or not yet. I haven't really pushed it out, but that's the date where I have a class. Otherwise, I have market updates all over the place. I tend to post my public speaking gigs towards the top of each blog post. And right now, I think I have 3 things, upcoming in that section. But otherwise, yeah, I'm always looking to speak somewhere. So, but I really appreciate it. Thank you.
People keep showing up too. People love your stuff, Ryan. So keep up the good work. Yeah, after we had that cool event at SAR, went out and saw you in Placer County, and that was a few hundred folks jam packed at that. What was that, Women's Rebel event or something?
Oh yeah, that was in Folsom.
In Folsom,
yeah. I lose track after a while. So
yeah, it was a good one. Yeah. Okay. Joey wants to know if you can talk about the difference in appraisal method between single family and 2 to 4 units.
That's a really good question. And let me try to keep this somewhat brief. But basically for single family homes, there's the primary approach to value that's used. It's called the sales comparison approach, the comps. Okay, you're looking at other comps. Okay. Now, when it comes to 2 to 4 units, they're income producing properties. And so we're not just looking at, other sales, the comps, we're also considering the income they can generate. And so during appraisals like that, the appraiser will use what's called the income approach. And so using income as a way to, figure out what the value of the property is. It's just sort of, another way to derive value in addition to the sales comparison approach. And there's also the cost approach, how much it would cost to build and, land. I find that a lot of times, people aren't motivated by the cost to build. They're more asking, what is it worth in today's market and what am I willing to pay for it right now? And so I would say in a nutshell, it's the addition of, really utilizing the income approach, and what this property can earn can make all the difference for value.
Do you have any stats like related to that question too on investors buying in this market? Because I thought I saw something recently where we saw a lull in investor purchase that's like picked back up or at least not lulling anymore.
For 2 to 4 units or the single family market?
I think for either, just like investor purchases in general.
Yeah. So, okay. So first, in the single family market, at least with cash, which I know not all investors use cash, but cash has kind of been hovering around the same level in the Sacramento region, depending on the month, anywhere 14, 15, 16%. And so it's not a dominant force in the market. Redfin and John Burns Real Estate Consulting would peg investors in Sacramento somewhere between 19 and 25% or so of all sales. And so There has been an uptick since the pandemic, but at the same time, the stats they really sagged at first, and so it was natural to see a little bit of an uptick, in my opinion. With 2 to 4 units, my observation so far in 2022, I just pulled some stats. And we're definitely seeing more cash. Last year, 20% of the sales were cash. This year, 25% so far. And, last year, like 10% of the buyers were FHA and VA, but then this year it's about 6.5%. And so it seems a little bit more subdued this year. And it looks like maybe cash has been a little bit more dominant, but the year's not over. But just sort of some preliminary stats. But I think that a lot of people are looking at the market right now and wondering, what are investors going to do? And I was talking with someone on Twitter the other day, and the sense was that, investors are going to start gutting the market. But here's the thing. If investors are looking at the market and if they were expecting for prices to decline, guess who's not going to jump in like right now, right? And so, Blackstone, has, millions and millions of dollars, if not billions, at their disposal. But at the same time, they've proven themselves to be very smart, whether we like to admit that or not, when it comes to residential real estate. And so, they're not going to make foolish moves and overpay for something like, we saw with Zillow and what they did as a flipper in the market. So they're not going to pull a Zillow. I don't think so anyway. That would sort of go against everything that we've seen them do. But right now, I think we're waiting to see, who are the buyers going to be in this coming market. I'm noticing a little bit more FHA lately, percentage-wise. Just barely a change, like from 11% to now 13% of the market, over the last couple of months. And so, that's to be determined how that goes. But I would welcome that to see more first-time buyers getting into contract. More VA would be great, and so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling it and seeing it from a mortgage lender's perspective of people getting pre-approved and FHA buyers getting their offers accepted, more VA buyers getting out there. So I'm sure that those will continue to trend upwards because we're in a market where, unfortunately, it was really hard for some of these buyers to get their offers accepted, and first-time buyers were really at a disadvantage over the last couple of years, where now they're able to write offers that get accepted, which is a good thing. That's what I was going to ask you, because you mentioned Zillow and you mentioned not being the best at predicting things, and they kind of fell on their face. What's your thought? Because I don't know the answer to this one either, but I'm seeing, especially in our market, more of these open door listings come to market. And from an outsider's perspective, who hasn't dug into it a ton, I see purchase for $538 in June, on the market for $550. Truth be told, in a neighborhood where everything's selling closer to $500, what is Open Door's strategy, if you do have an idea on that, Ryan? And I guess you probably have some stats with how many listings they have and what kind of stuff, at least locally, we've got from Open Door.
Yeah. And first, I did see, I think someone was was watching from Open Door, and so I welcome that person to chime in if you'd like. But okay, so here's some stats I pulled 5 days ago for Open Door. They have 357 units in Sacramento. 75% of what they have is in Sacramento County, and so barely any of it is in El Dorado, like 2%. 5% yellow, 17% placer. But my sense is that as I've been watching them, the interesting thing is that it seems like a growing disparity between what's on the market and what's in contract. And I get it if the market has changed, that's a huge thing to wonder. But, say they have 310 properties that are listed for sale right now, and only 58 of those are pending, okay, when I'm looking at tax records. And so that means that about 250 are active. So 81% of those listings don't have a buyer yet. And so that's a huge disparity. I think they need to sort of get their pending pile to be larger. And, maybe partnering with Zillow will help with that. But maybe there's just a need to adapt strategy somewhat. these are really big companies. I think that we see individual examples where clearly they have not done well. You know, maybe it was a misfire, they acquired it for too much, or they bought the wrong property. You know, but they have literally, you know, billions of dollars at their disposal, and so, you know, they can hemorrhage money and lose money in some transactions and figure it out over time. I think they're in a stage where they're trying to crack the code. But one person who's worth following is, his name's Tyler Oakland, and I think he puts out a lot of really interesting stuff about Open Door. He doesn't work for Open Door. But you can find him on Twitter, and he's, you know, posting a lot about earnings and such. And I was talking with him the other day because I've been sort of pointing out, like, hey, what's going on with Open Door? And every time I mention it on Twitter, sometimes people sort of jump on me who are Open Door enthusiasts. And, you know, I'm not here to throw shade on anyone. I think that there's, frankly, room in real estate for different models. Absolutely. Okay, there's not just one model. Same thing with appraisals, okay? But I think what Tyler has underscored is that Sacramento's been tough, okay? And the numbers have not looked sexy here. Okay, now if someone wants to jump in here and tell me otherwise, that's fine, but that's been my observation as I look at the disparity between pendings and listings and, you know, just anecdotal stories. And it's also, I think, what a guy like that is looking at too. And I think that he wrote a post recently called The Phoenix Problem, to look at, you know, Open Door in Phoenix struggling. And so it'll be interesting to watch, I think, these big companies, you know, tech companies, you know, what they do, and particularly, I think, what this new relationship with Zillow looks like, as Open Door listings are going to be on Zillow's website. And, you know, so is that a game changer? How does that, you know, change things for the future? We'll see what happens. But I think if I was a consultant to Open Door, I would say they've got to find a way to make sure that their properties aren't spending enough or as much time on the market. My observation is, generally speaking, they've been a lot more overpriced than other listings. I think statistically that's been true. When I pull stats, you know, price reductions over the week, Open Door almost has more. They have a greater percentage than in their share of.
I'm apologizing in advance if you guys can hear all this yard work going on outside of my office window. Like,
got it. You heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I'm like, holy, what am I hearing? And I put off my ear thing, and I got all that. I appreciate the insight on Open Door, because I'm genuinely curious, and I'm not like throwing shade at Open Door, but it seems to me like they might have made the same mistake that Zillow made, where I think that they just overpaid. And so they've got these properties where I look at it and I go, 550 based on my amateur analysis is overpriced. If I see stuff similar selling for 510, 515, 520, and then I look at the records that show, oh, they paid 538 for it in June. I know they're getting money off of title fees and other ways, you know, where they don't necessarily have to make a $50,000 profit, but you certainly can't buy at 538 and sell at 508, and that's not a business model. So it'll be interesting to see. And I actually, truth be told, I'm doing a loan for somebody who works for Open Door. I'm going to ask her some questions around, like, maybe if they're on the inside, they've got a feel for, like, it's a strategy where, hey, we're going to, you know, gain some market share. We're going to show people in Sacramento what iBuying is all about, how easy it can be. And then, you know, over these 400 buy and sell transactions, we might lose 40 million, but hey, we're going to, you know, use that to leverage in the future because that many more people will be exposed to iBuying. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
There's lots of layers here. It's a big onion for sure. So, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, Carrie's got another question. This is an easy one, Carrie. I'm trying to get PMI canceled. Lenders saying I need to have 25% equity. Most of the PMI contracts, if you read it with lenders, 78% loan to value is the magic number. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why it's not 20%, but it's 22% equity, so that, you know, either their automated valuation systems or a new appraisal can show that you've got that 22% equity. They will remove that mortgage insurance. It's not always a super clean and easy process, unfortunately. So whoever's servicing that loan, you know, all lenders have their different quirks and how they go about it, but I would just lean on them to try to figure out how to get that removed, and best of luck to you.
and get the appraiser out there as soon as possible. That's my advice from the valuation standpoint. I've noticed people when they're removing PMI, there's a sense of urgency, and they've called me and I'm like, man, I'm backed up. I'm not quick enough for you. Let me give you the name of a ball league, because I think the perception is that, like, what if prices go down? They are going down. And so, just wanted to throw that out there. So make sure that value is there, though. Don't waste your money on an appraisal, $500, $600, whatever the fee is, if value is clearly not there. But yeah, find out what that specific number is. It's $625,000 that you need, and just be realistic. Are you there or not? And if it looks like you are, great, get that appraisal ordered. Find out from the lender if you can hire your own appraiser, though, or if you have to use someone on their staff. Okay, I think that's a huge question also. But yeah, get the ball rolling. That would be my advice if it looks viable.
Great advice. I just want to recognize my buddy Kyle real quick. When is the market crashing? You're on the wrong channel, Kyle. You were looking for reventure capital. It's crashing every day, according to some YouTubers. I'm not the one, though, and I don't know how much of this onion we want to peel back, Ryan. But there's a lot of different things we can point to say, is the market softening? Is it leveling out? Is it finding its new normal? All these things that probably are yes, but crashing. I'm not a fear porn type of guy, but what says you, Mr. Lundquist?
Yeah, so I think right now prices are clearly declining. We should see at least prices softening at this time of year. I'll push out some stats this week to show that it's been more inflamed, the price declines, the price reductions, everything this time of year. And so there's nothing wrong with recognizing that, the prices are going down right now. But is that a bigger issue? Have we entered a new phase, a new cycle? We need time to see the trend. Okay, I know sometimes people get so frustrated with that answer, but we're in the midst of change right now. Okay, and sometimes when you're living in the midst of change, you don't know everything about the future. In fact, I would say every time, right? And so we need time to see that, but there's some, on one hand, a lot of metrics look very normal on paper, but the one thing that I mentioned to Matt earlier that's not normal is dropping volume. Okay, at least in the Sacramento market, 30% pending contracts, fewer, or 30% fewer sales, like that's a really big number. And so if that number gets under control and we start to see it subside, then we're like, okay, here was a blip. The market was shocked. Okay. If that market continues to, or if that number continues to grow 35%, 40%, 45, 50, then, the only thing that we'd be able to say is that, the market has really shifted into a different cycle, and we are in a full-fledged declining market right now. Okay. I think what a lot of YouTubers do is that they put the cart before the horse, maybe, and they're so hungry to see what they want to see that they're maybe not always looking at stats. Okay. Or there's always like this sort of, I'm imposing doom on every single stat, maybe rather than being objective. Okay. And again, I know this drives people nuts, but the reality is that the future hasn't happened yet. It doesn't mean we're not naive. Like I just said, like, here are some red flags in today's market. It's just, we don't know exactly how it'll play out. Okay. I will say the one thing that we don't know about the future is, what's going to happen with volume and prices. But, there's no mechanism in place to help people afford the market more unless there's significant job growth. Or, if rates go down, that's, I think, a temporary solution to help people afford the prices. Or, what would be maybe the most to help people afford? Price declines, right? And so that would be a tool that I think would be inevitable over time if we continue to see demand wane. Okay, we're living in the midst of change. We'll see where it goes. I don't know if mom jeans are going to be popular next year still, and we'll see what happens with real estate stats. But I'm watching like a hawk, and we got to be unafraid to report the trends that are actually here. There's no doom lens. There's no rose-colored lens. The straight dope. That's what we should always shoot for.
I agree. Thanks, brother. Yeah, if prices do come down, I'm on the buy side, so I'm rooting for it. Trust me, I don't see prices going down 40% in 12 months like some of the doom and gloomers. But another thing to think about, and then we'll wrap up this whole topic because it's going forever, is real estate doesn't move as fast as most people like to think it does, right? Even in the worst period in real estate history during, the collapse that was 9, 10, 11, those years, it was, 1.5%, 2% a month at its very worst, right? So it wasn't like from 1 month to the next, you saw prices go down by 10%. So it'll be a slow moving ship, because real estate is a slow moving ship, and time will tell. All right, let's see what other questions. I'm trying to sort through some of these questions, see which ones are the best. This one I can answer real quick. Lonnie, DSCR loans for your Del Paso rental. What are rates for 70% loan to value and 720 credit score? If folks don't know what a DSCR, debt service coverage ratio loan is, it's a non-QM loan. I'm just going to guess here, and this is the way I'm not making an offer, and so it's truly somewhere between 7 and 7.5%, depending on how much you want to pay. I know we've got one that we locked in this morning at 6.99 that had a couple points cost. So feel free to reach out to us, Lonnie. You can go to greatmortgagebroker.com, fill out a quick form, let us know where you're at, how we can help. I promise you someone from the team will reach out shortly. You could even bypass that if you wanna and hit us up at team@mtmg.com. I'm not sure which one's faster. Maybe try both, and we'll get back to you as far as that DSCR loans. I don't know if you're talking Del Paso as in Del Paso in Sacramento, or it's Del Paso, Texas, but we're licensed in 48 out of 50 states, which some people haven't heard yet. If you haven't heard, now you know. 48 out of 50 states. We can help you in every state minus Nevada, which makes it really hard to get licensed, and Hawaii, which is also, I think you need a physical office on that island. I don't know if do you want to volunteer, Ryan, to set up our Hawaii office?
Let's do it. Yeah. If you can, I will retire right now, man.
Ryan Lundquist, head of our Hawaii branch of U Mortgage. Cool, man. Well, I know we're coming up on an hour. I don't know how much time you got, but I appreciate the heck out of you jumping on for 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm good. Let's keep going if you can. Let's just try to knock out some of these real quick. That would be great.
Yeah, there's a good one too here on new development, and this is an interesting question because it's really like, I guess your thoughts on a new development in Napa, which is 45 minutes from Ryan and I in Sacramento. They've got pre-sales scheduled for October this year. Do you think that in this changing market it'll start prices a bit lower so they don't have to reduce? What would you think, Ryan? Just, I guess, your guess.
It's a total guess. It's like asking, do you think that seller, what are they going to do? And I have no idea, but I think it would be prudent to price according to the market. And if prices are softer, I would think, reduce. Go to where the market's at, rather than listing and then having to drop and find the market. Okay, but they can also though look and go, here's where our prices are, and if it's a little bit higher, they can pad that full of some credits. And if those credits are strong enough, and there's a tractor beam that pulls people in to pay more, that can work for them. But I think in a market where buyers are getting more used to paying below list price and to having less competition, it's a dangerous thing, I think, to price too high in so many situations. If it's higher, buyers are very sensitive to that, and they're not going to make it happen. But if that builder is priced at X amount, and part of that is a rate buy down, and then credits, and then free upgrades, so to speak, even though the buyer's paying for them, like it's I think that can be a strong case for moving the needle for product. So it just depends, but that's kind of all the factors involved in my mind.
Yeah, it's interesting how that whole game is played, right? Where you can come out with a price of $840. It could have $10,000 to buy the rate down, $10,000 to pay for closing costs, free granite countertop upgrades, all these upgrades, right? And then they're going to have all these past sales that show an $840,000 price to kind of set comps for that development. It's a funny game we play in real estate, I think, but I like that answer too, because it would just be a guess, right? You mentioned something, Ryan, which is important. is like, it's like guessing what any individual seller would do. We got to keep in mind, builders are like resale sellers, right? They just, decide they're doing it at scale. They're not selling one individual house at a time, but each individual builder, each individual seller can decide, here's what I want to price at, and have whatever reasons they want.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Stacy's got an individual question about a unique property. How far can you go out to comp a unique property if there's none within the area city?
That's a good question, Stacy. And there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. If you're working on, with a geodesic dome, you're probably going to have to go out really, really far. And sometimes your comps might be 15 to 20 miles away. Okay. What I would do are two things, though. I would go back in time, okay, and look through many years worth of sales in the immediate area, find some unique stuff, and just ask, what was the market willing to pay in this location? And how did that unique property compare to other stuff? I think that's good. So we can go back in time, and then we can also go out further. And I think what happens sometimes in real estate is that we just want to go further without maybe doing our homework first, going, let me just go back in time first. And so I would do both. I start to get concerned, though, when, say, you're in Sacramento County, and then all of a sudden I'm, pulling something like an agent said, a property in Elk Grove. I've been told twice that the best comps are in Napa, or I said the best comps are in Granite Bay, and that's laughable, to be honest. That's utterly ridiculous. Someone shopping in Elk Grove isn't simultaneously shopping in Granite Bay. Or, an agent the other day for a property in Solano County said, the best comps are in Napa. It's like the second time I've heard it this year. And it's ridiculous. And so, no, the best comps are probably, older, and then they're in surrounding communities. And I think one of the things we have to think about with any unique property, too, is where's the price ceiling? At what point will someone no longer pay the certain amount before moving on to buy something else entirely? And so there's got to be something out there. And I know, Stacey, you're local, and so send me an email if you want. And if I can help, give any specific context without, pulling comps for free, that kind of stuff, really happy to help you. Okay.
That's great advice. I think it's kind of funny, that sellers are saying, "Oh, use those comps." If sellers believe that, I'd like to list my house and tell them to use Beverly Hills comps.
Yeah. Let's use New York right now. Like, I'll list my house today.
Yeah. Yeah. We can both retire. Cool. I think, we got a lot of appraisal stuff. David Hall, thanks for joining. I was once told an FHA appraiser can use the square footage of a non-permitted garage conversion or addition for the value as opposed to using square footage on the tax record. Is that true?
David, hey, what's up, man? So it is true. It's true of any loan. And here's the thing about tax records. It's not the definitive source for public records, okay, for accuracy, okay? Even, an appraisal on my desk, I just finished in Rio Linda. Tax records is incorrect. Like, what is there actually is smaller than public record says. And so sometimes public records, maybe the builder turned in the wrong thing. Maybe they counted the garage on accident. I mean, who knows, right? In our area, they tend to be pretty good. There's some areas of the country that are really, really patchy, okay? And so this answer would depend based on location, but I think the struggle, though, is it's not permitted. And so FHA would come back, like most lenders, and say, okay, if you're going to assign value to that, and if you're going to count it in the square footage, then what we want you to do is to show us that the market is willing to pay that. Support it from the market, okay? Now, if someone puts up, erects one wall, and it's this cruddy conversion, and there's the water heater, and there's the washer and dryer, and it looks like a garage, okay? And then it's like, we can't just all of a sudden add 400 square feet. And so I think buyers are going to pay for quality, but look, the appraiser should the appraiser, you're going to get a lot of different opinions, okay? I've included it before during some cases where, man, this property has sold as a larger size multiple times. I'm lucky enough to have a couple comps that have a non-permitted conversion, especially in areas like Arden Manor or Broderick in West Sacramento. everyone and their mom has a non-permitted garage conversion, so we could show it from the market, okay? But the problem with that is, say, like in Elk Grove 95757, you have a non-permitted garage conversion, and then people are like, that's really uncommon, and we're not willing to pay for this. And so that's where it becomes a problem. So part of it's about location, quality. It's going to vary from appraiser to appraiser, but FHA is going to come back and be like, hey, man, if you are including this, we want to see support. Okay, explain what you did, but there better be the support there. I think that's really, really big issue. And so not to be gray, but it's kind of not a black and white issue there. I think there's a lot of moving parts. If you email me though, I have a blog post about lack of permits and how appraisers deal with that sometimes. It's going to be all over the board.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what I heard as a layman listening to that was, if it's common and it's easy for you to assign a value to something, whether it's an unpermitted addition or anything else, that's where it's easier to include in the appraisal report. I think that I've followed you long enough and heard enough stuff to where, that can apply to multiple things, right? Where like an area where every other house has a pool, it's easier to kind of gauge what type of value this pool adds, because in this area, houses with pools sold for $25,000 more than houses without pools and stuff like that. So appreciate the context there, man. I think that's valuable for folks. Jason Falcone, thanks for listening all the way from rural Indiana. He's got an appraiser question as well. What kind of value does an appraiser typically add or subtract to a septic system?
Jason, that's an awesome question. And I mean, here's the thing. I think the value is probably baked into the market. Okay. If a property has a septic system, chances are it's in an area where other comps also have a septic system. So it's not something that you even really have to think about because it's baked in. Everything has a septic. Okay. Now, if there was this textbook example of everything is on public utilities and then the one house with the septic system, I mean, the right answer would be, well, let me look and find some comps with septic systems. Fat chance, right? And so it would be very difficult, I think, to prove that. But the reality is that I think it might not be a big deal to some buyers. Maybe it's going to be a huge deal for others. And I think by the time the appraiser gets there, though, and there were 4 offers on the property, and this one property with the septic lines up really well with everything else, I mean, there's an argument maybe to be made, even from the amount of offers, that this was not an issue. Or you talk to agents involved and they're saying, oh yeah, this was a massive issue. No one wanted the septic. And so I think there's a lot of moving parts, but hopefully it's a situation where if everything's on septic and well, like it's honestly not even something we have to think about unless you have a septic that was, maybe fit for a 2-bedroom house, and then all of a sudden you did a non-permitted addition and it's a 4-bedroom house. Guess what you're going to have a problem with later? You're going to have something overflowing because that septic system isn't, big enough. So that's kind of what I would say.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate your time. I got some people to call back before I head out for the day. I'm sure this won't be the last conversation we have, whether it's live on YouTube a month or 2 from now, looking back and seeing what happened in Q3 or in person. If anybody wants to check out Ryan, he's SAC Appraiser on Twitter and Instagram. SacramentoAppraisalblog.com is where you find the long form blog posts, which are super informative, super cool. Everybody that sees them loves them. So I'm not just saying that, right? Like, it's just widely known that it's good stuff. Anything else that you want to say or shout out, Ryan? Uh-oh, value overload. You might have froze. I don't know if that's on your side or my side, but there was so much value.
Sorry, Matt. You're breaking up. I can't hear anything you're saying, but if you're saying bye, I'll just say bye.
All right, cool. Well,
there you go.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It was like people were so excited about following you on Instagram and Twitter at SAC Appraiser that the computer froze, or Sacramento Appraisal Blog. But I didn't know if you had anything to add, parting words of advice, or anywhere else that you wanted people to interact with you. All right. Well, I think it's officially frozen. I don't know. Yeah. If you're looking to connect with a great real estate agent, no matter where you are in the country, go to homeandmoney.com/Matt. If you want to connect with me and my team to get yourself pre-approved, you do that at greatmortgagebroker.com. Thanks for joining. Appreciate everyone who did. Hopefully me and Ryan added some value to your day. Check me out every Monday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, live on YouTube. Hopefully the internet issue is not a permanent one. I'm going to call Comcast. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.